Webinar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have people muted, and the best way to ask questions will be to type into the chat box. Can you see that? So I think what we want to do is just have people type into the chat box. And Frank Scheer, I see you're on the call, and also, so I'm going to unmute your professors. There is Frank Scheer. Frank, it looks like maybe you have it muted on your end if you want to. And then also, did I see Jim Bryant? I think I did. Let's find out. So what I want to do is, there are two professors on the call. I'd like them to join in as we go through. And then, here we go, Jim Bryant. Jim, can you hear me?
Well, this is Frank, and you're loud and clear.
All right, very good. And Jim, your microphone on my end shows green, so I think that you are on. But speak up when, because what I think would be a good format would be Jim and Frank, if you guys participate, and maybe Frank, you want to give the introduction, and then we'll kind of we'll tag team it.
Well, that's fine, Michael, and I appreciate you setting up the telecon, and greetings to all the ASCM students that are attending. Michael, just so that you know, we're trying this a little different this year, or for this school term, in that we're doing it during week 3 instead of week 2.
Okay.
The students began working with Cincinnati Seasonings during week 2, and the thought is by waiting a week that they will have more questions.
Yes.
And that they may have encountered. So that's I'm hopeful that all the students, if they have questions about how to use the Cincinnati Seasonings simulation.
Yeah.
Jim, I guess, is working with collaborative logistics.
Right. Yep.
But I hope that we get a lot of participation tonight. This is the whole purpose, is to help each student understand how to do the simulation and learn the most from this application.
All right. Well, then I think and what we can do is, if people have questions, just type into the chat box, and then if we need to, we can also give you the microphone and you can speak to everybody. So let's try to make this as interactive as possible. And Frank, I can hardly chew gum and walk at the same time, let alone talk and monitor the chat box. And I see Kathleen Williams is here. Thank you, Kathleen. And everybody else, you can see that. Do you see where that chat box is? I think that would be the thing to do. And then Frank, can you monitor the chat box and just interject, because I have a habit of rambling.
Well, that's what I'll do. I'll follow the previous procedure where you sort of do the introduction and show basically the entry into the SCM Globe software. As there's questions posted in the chat, I'll raise those when you take little short breaks between what you want to point out.
Good, good. And I see Mariah Jeffery is also here. So I am going to unmute Mariah, and I don't understand why this isn't unmuting. Mariah, I'm going to get this unmuted, but I don't understand why it isn't just unmuting. Huh. Mariah, for some reason, it will not. I can unmute everybody else by clicking on them, and you know computers, they're made to drive you crazy.
There seems to be a lot of background noise,
Yeah,
Mike.
I see. How's that? We can't have a lot of people unmuted because then we get all that background noise. So it's better now. Sounds good. And Mariah, I do not understand why it will not let me unmute you. Maybe there's something on your side. No, I'm gonna unmute everybody. Now I'm gonna mute everybody back again, just so we don't drive ourselves crazy. And Mariah, I apologize. I have no idea. Maybe there's something on your end that you can do. It simply will not unmute. It remains muted, whereas everyone else, if I click on them, you're part of the conversation. So I will not attempt to defy. Oh, Mariah, you're offline. That's the problem. If you can hear me, well, you probably can't because you're offline. You're best to dial in again. Best to just dial in again. All right. Well, let's start. What are some questions? Uh, Anyone? I think the best way to start would be with a question. It'll be improv tonight. So type in some questions into the chat box. You've all been working with it for a week. Okay, I'm seeing one here. It just starts with sir. I don't see anything else after that. I always like it when people call me sir, but I'm not sure I deserve to be called sir.
This is Mariah. Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Oh, very good. All right. So all three of the professors also are online. And if I need to give anyone else the microphone to ask a specific question, I can do that as well. Okay, Catherine, hello. Does it make sense to add storage capacity to a store? Well, it depends. Great wishy-washy answer. All three of the professors feel free to chime in. I want to answer the question from a does the app do it? Kind of a technical perspective, and I think that the three professors should speak to it from the learning point of view and what you want people to focus on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and load a copy of Cincinnati Seasonings. I click on that view library. I'm going to load Cincinnati Seasonings, and then we can kind of talk and watch at the same time. So Cincy Seasonings. And we'll just open that up. So Frank, when someone asks, does it make sense to add storage capacity, how would you answer that question? Or Mariah?
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. And I saw that suddenly I became muted, so I was doing some talking and wasn't paying attention.
There we go.
So anyway, recommend about adding capacity. I just heard somebody say it depends, and that's absolutely correct. The idea for all of these exercises during week 2 was to do whatever you had to do, regardless of expense, to just go ahead and get the system to run for 30 days. That's not necessarily the right thing to do in the real world, but that's the familiarization with the various components of the system. So that's why we did that during the first week that we were using this application. After that, the whole idea is to try to refine your network so that you're reducing costs but maintaining or improving service. And so you may want to add storage capacity if it results in lower cost or better service. So that's how I would treat that particular answer. Just so that you know, Michael, there are several questions. So after after you work on that one, the next question is Philip Jackson, and he's unable to locate the edit button.
Okay, well, there are three screens in the app. And the first one, everyone can see my screen. The first screen is your account management screen. And you see the edit buttons right there next to the name of the supply chain model that you're working on. And when you click edit, you're going to go into the edit screen. The screens are labeled right there. So basically, we're always, and then right in the upper right, you'll always find in the upper right corner of your screen in the application, those are where the navigation buttons are. And if I click on simulation, it's going to open up the simulate screen. And we've had people say, hey, those screens look kind of similar. Could you help me just distinguish between them? And we said, yeah, that's a good idea. So that's why we have, we kind of get used to it. And that doesn't mean that we've, so they're labeled right there. You typically, once you've opened up, you can, from either edit or from simulate, you can see that my account. So I always say, this app, I think, is easier than Facebook, and I am clueless when it comes to Facebook, and everyone seems to know how to do that. So I'm thinking on the Richter scale, I'm hoping that this is, we want you to learn the software quickly. The exercise is not really about the software. It's really about solving the supply chain problem. We want the software to be transparent, meaning like a good pair of glasses. You see right through it, and it helps you clarify the picture. I hope I answered that question. So are you good with that on where the edit button is? Click edit to edit, I always say. And then there was another one about, is there a single place like a dashboard? Yes, or did you have another question, Frank?
Yes. And then Kathleen Williams is asking how you delete a facility or a store, or I guess the flip side is how you add one, because that'll be a later week assignment, is adding a store.
Yep. So now also everything really is online. I know everyone says that, but this is what you're seeing now is the result of actually 5 years of feedback from people like yourself, instructors like Frank in particular, actually. And when you are in the app, if you click on the help button, it will open up the online guide, and seriously, everything you will need to know, other than the meaning of life, is going to be right here and reasonably well organized. There are at least 10 ways to find everything. I have not created a bizarre and wickedly difficult way to look things up. There are links throughout everywhere. Anyone who doesn't go through the getting started, don't say I didn't tell you so. It's like walking through a room without the lights on. You're going to bang your shins against the furniture. You're going to get angry. You're going to be frustrated. And then you're going to say unkind things about the app. And I want you to like the app. So please do go through the getting started, 15 to 30 minutes. A lot of people, all they do is they click on the video tutorials there. There's 3 of them. First one is about 10 minutes. The other 2 are 5. If you check those out, you'll know everything. I am a slower learner, so what we've done is we've taken those videos and pulled out screenshots, etc., and gone into some more detail using screenshots and text in the other tutorials. Then also, the 7 frequently asked questions, and there are 7. There's not 38 or 59. There's 7. Guaranteed all of you will come across at least one of them, probably 2 or 3 of them. And again, when you start to feel that feeling of frustration rising and puzzling, you can't figure out why is this doing it, and then again you start to think unkind thoughts about the app and even about me, don't. Check the FAQs first. I'm not going to read them here because you can do that, but you're going to find extremely valuable information in the FAQs. And then the bug report. There are 4 bugs. None of them are in the simulation engine. They're all related to the way data is displayed or downloaded. Each of them has a specific workaround. Again, check them out. And then some points to remember. Okay, so you got that. So now when it comes to adding or deleting apps, or facilities, these video tutorials, If you go through those video tutorials, we will show you there in some videos, as well as I'll do one right now. If I want to make a new, because everything that we're doing is we're only manipulating the 4 entities. It seems like it might be complex, but there's a simple underlying pattern here. 4 entities, and those are products, facilities, vehicles, and routes. That's all we're ever doing is defining and placing those, and then they operate in conjunction with each other. So to add a new product, for instance, I would open up the product menu, and I would click on New. If I want to delete that, I would click on Remove. So by the precisely same logic, to add a new facility, I open up the facilities menu. I can see the ones I have right here. If I click on any one of them, I'll get a little dialog box about them. If I click on New, it'll open up a new dialog box, and we'll call this, new facility, or anything I want. New facility. We have various different types that are defaults. You can choose any of them. You can, I think, at first, Frank, they just want to accept the defaults, yes, and eventually they're going to start typing over them as you start to work through your problems. But just go ahead and do that. And then every facility needs a product, otherwise there's no reason to have a facility. So in Cincinnati Seasonings, there is only one product, whereas in Collaborative there are about 4 products. So anyway, your products will show up here in the drop-down. We only have one there. We have some defaults as far as that. You can accept it, or you can say, no, the demand isn't 70, it's 36. And the quantity on hand isn't 100, it's, it's whatever I want, whatever it really is, 67. Unless you try to overstock, because we're showing you right here, now you've used up 13% of your storage capacity, which we see there is at 500. So anyway, I click Add, and now I've added that. And then if I click Save, it's going to say, hey, put that on the map. So what we're doing and why we're creating an extremely accurate model here, this isn't just a toy. We have worked really hard on the graphics, the user interface. We want it to be intuitively obvious, as they say, not just, we don't want you to be staring a differential calculus equation in the face. I find that intimidating as all get out. Which is not to say that there isn't mathematical rigor here, because when I place, say we're opening a new store in Toledo, we're not just opening a new store somewhere, I don't know, in Toledo, wherever the heck that is. The point here, you can do that. You can drop it down in the middle of the river there if you want. But the point really is, think about where you would really put such a new facility. And in the upper left corner there, I'm going to click on satellite. So I'm switching from the map view. We're just leveraging the power of Google Maps. So we're zooming in here on Google Earth, and I'm going to put a store exactly where a store would actually be. Like if I was opening up a new pizza store, well, I'd probably put, there's a real pizza store right there, which is probably an indication that might be a good place for a pizza store. Or maybe I'm going to, build a new store right there. I mean, it's not like we're, just bound to reality, although reality is always what we try to base our decisions on. So I can see that right there. Like here's the Black Cloister Brewing Company. Maybe Cincinnati Seasonings is going to open a store right next door, right in that parking lot. A parking lot is only a holding spot for a new building. So boom, I'm going to put it right there in this plan that we're working on. So if I click on it, there it is. I'll put that right there. Put it right there where it's going to be. And that is the new facility. I'm going to click Save. And then as soon as you've added a new facility, now when I pull back to the super satellite view, I think the map is a more visually coherent way to cope with it all. So we can see now we've got this facility out there in Toledo. So once you add a new facility, it immediately raises the question, how are we going to get product out there? What's the demand? How are we going to get product out there? We're extending that network. So you'll learn, you can't really think of any one of these 4 entities in isolation. And at first it will feel awkward as all get out, but it is, actually, I want to point something out here. You should definitely, where it says case studies, I think all of you will be either working on Cincinnati Seasonings or Collaborative. Definitely check them out. Look at the Cincinnati Seasonings intro. Really good information there to kind of get you set, as well as there are some words of wisdom from Frank Scheer, and it's right here, what you learn about what you learn from working on case studies. You're going to go through an awkward period, and Frank drew the analogy, and I totally agree. It's like learning a line dance. It's a relatively simple dance, and yet this is me, that guy right there, that's me right there. Two left feet, trying to figure out which way is up. But all of a sudden it does click, and it is actually kind of fun. So you're going to go through, all of you maybe are probably right here in this stage going, what? Which way is up? What do I do? It's natural. Just grin and bear it, and it's going to get a whole lot more fun. All right. And then, Frank, so do you see other questions? I saw this one about,
Yes.
Is there a dashboard?
Well, yes, that's right. That was the next one that I was going
All
to
right.
focus on. Is there an option like a dashboard that shows that's the facilities?
And there is. So again, let's go back here to Cincinnati Seasonings and read through all of that. I won't read through it all like that, but again, wherever you see these blue links, they're links. You can get to analyzing simulation data in about 15 different ways. We have sprinkled links in relevant places throughout, so everything is easy to find. I could find it through the link, or I could go up here to the menu, and I could look through the dash, like this, and anyway, you get that, all right? So there it is. Now, this is useful because it gives you a little bit of heads up about how to interpret the different kinds of on-screen data displays. And then we talk very specifically about interpreting the on-hand inventory chart. This is from a case study that actually has 3 products, but the shape and the slope of the curves always mean the same thing. Those aren't just random. So we tell you what they are right there. And then as you continue to scroll down, you'll come to this, download simulation data to spreadsheet reporting templates. So that is the answer to your wish for a dashboard. And what that dashboard is a spreadsheet template. We're showing you here because what we want to do is you want to work on 30-day snapshots. So, thus you'll be creating a 30-day profit and loss statement along with some KPIs, key performance indicators that are showing you performance efficiency. So we show you how to, because once you get your supply chain to run, it'll usually run a little bit past 30. Just press the stop button and then trim off the excess data. So we'll show you how to do that there. And then I'm going to just click on that screenshot. This is a shot of one possible. You should also realize that everyone will, depending on what you do, unless you all do precisely lockstep the same thing, in which case would be suspicious. Because why would you all do that unless you were literally just, there's no sense. Everyone will take their own path through this maze that is the simulation. You'll find your own ways of getting it to run 30 days. And then here is the result of one of them. And we can see that, well, I did get it to run for 30 days. It wasn't the most profitable way. I can see my gross profit here was I lost about $1.5 million in this month, but hey, better luck next month. So this is a way to start orienting myself and starting to figure out what do I need to do now. I can see, for instance, my inventory days of supply at Fort Wayne is way out of line, and I can see that therefore I have to, my storage expense is really large because I have all that excess inventory there, and my operating, vehicle operating costs, et cetera, et cetera. So what this starts to show you when you look at both the finance side of it and the ops side of it is there's a dashboard right there. And there are other methods or other metrics or other measures that you can use when you take a look at the data. I'm going to go back here, and so when you scroll right down to the end of that page, here's the link. If I click on that, you're going to go to Google Docs, and you can see the instructions there in blue. So sometimes people say, oh, I need to get edit access, but you don't, because you can just click right there. It says download a copy by clicking on the word file in the top left corner of that screen, and there is that word right there. So then I'm just going to I'll download as a Microsoft Excel, and there it is. And when I click on it, it'll open up. And what you'll have then is your own copy of this template, which you can modify, and you will need to modify it because you can see initially we've got 3 stores, and as you start to add more stores in Chicago and Columbus and other places, you just look at just look at the equations here in the reporting template, and then you can see where it's reading the data from, because we have 2 tabs. The front tab has the equations that read the data in the second tab and then calculate the report. There's the second tab, and it's the SIM data. So when we download that data, trim it off, like we said, to 30 days, everything that I'm showing you is online. You'll learn it even faster than I'm saying it. Just take a look. We tried to make it super clear, and I'm not going to worry about saving that. So that's the answer to that question. There is a dashboard, yes.
All right, and Michael, let me interject. What students should be doing at the end of each week, they ought to save their simulation and give it a name, the one that they're most satisfied with. During the course of a week, they may do several variations of simulations, but one will eventually be the one that's running 30 days that satisfies the assignment. So be sure to save those on a weekly basis, as such as week 1 or 2 or week 3 or week 4, so that you'll have those for reference in your account management screen. And then the other aspect is please do download your spreadsheet data each week, because when you're writing your summary report during week 10, the more data that you have to look at week-to-week comparisons about where you made improvements, you will be in better shape for summarizing your accomplishments in that paper. With that, just so that people know, I'm looking at the most recent question and then working back up the list. So Tori Conway asked, what does WFP stand for in the dropdown when you try to edit a facility?
Right, and you'll also see that in the vehicles. And we've done some work with the World Food Program. So it stands for World Food Program, and we've been working with some other disaster response and humanitarian organizations laying out disaster response supply chains. So they like to use, those are the, let me just show you. When you click on them, what you'll see is that if you place them on the map, you're going to get international symbols that all the humanitarian organizations use to label warehouses, harbors, airports, etc. That's all that means. Same thing with the vehicles. So you really shouldn't be worrying about that. You should just use, like, when you're gonna, right here, just use ones up at the top. Don't need to worry about the WFP ones. They're really just duplicates anyway, with a little bit of different defaults.
Yes. Yep. I want to make a comment, Michael, that as I look through the chat, actually students are interacting with each other, which is a wonderful situation. The way I look at the weekly discussions, and it's probably true for the other classes that are attending, is that this is really a group project where a student should not be bashful. If they can't get things to work, they should describe their problem with the expectation that other students will share their experience and how they either resolved it or what their outcomes were. So I'm very pleased with the kinds of chat that I see going on between the students. That's really what I would like to see as we get into the weekly discussions for assignments. So then the next question is, let me see. I guess I just see where people are reporting that they're here. So maybe the other thing that you can do, one of the things that I did for my class during week 3 is I attached a JSON file that showed a successful operation for 30 days for those people that were a little stuck. Also, so that they could compare their results, even if they went 30 days, how each of us are coming up with different specific results, as you mentioned already, Michael.
Right.
So perhaps just describe how you load a JSON file and look at what somebody else has done.
Right here. And again, at the bottom of, for instance, any of the case study introductions, I just went down here, as well as, again, you can find it here, how to download and share a supply chain. So we always illustrate things with screenshots, 3-step process. You save a copy. If you get a model, when you run the simulation, it looks good and you want to share it, or you're puzzled and you can't figure out why. Either way, download a copy, and maybe I'll just do it right now. You download a copy to your own PC, attach it to an email, and send it to anybody else using SCM Globe. They'll be then able to open that JSON file. It ends with a .json, so we call them JSON files, and they'll be able to load it, open it up in the edit screen, run it, make changes, send it back to you. So it's a great way to collaborate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my account screen. There's several ways to save things. You can, when you're in your edit screen, if you click on options, one of the options there is save. So I could save it right there. It's a quick way. It'll just save it using the same name that you already have right now. It'll timestamp it so you can differentiate them by the timestamp. Or you can go to your account screen. And what I did just a moment ago, well, Frank was saying you want to make copies saved at the end of every week. Click on that save button, and then you can name it. So that's a good place where you say, oh, I'll call it the week. I called it week 2. So it's week, week 2, Cincy model, whatever you want to call it. And when you click save, what it'll do is your screen, I have a lot of models, obviously, but you'll see your screen is broken up into 2 parts. There's the top part is your active models, and then the bottom part is save states, which are just saved copies of the models, work in progress. And if I look down here at the bottom, I'm going to see the one that I just saved, week 2 Cincy model. Now, if I want to download that, I click on the download. So I'm going to download that, and you saw that, and you see it's week 2 Cincy model.json. So there's my JSON file, and if I want to send a copy to Frank, I would just go into my email and boom, attach it, compose an email and attach it and send it to Frank. And then Frank gets it and downloads it to his PC. I then, say now I've gotten it, there it is, I just downloaded it, one of you sent it to me. If I, right next to the break there between your save states and your active models, it says upload a save file. I can either drag and drop it right on there, or if I just click that button, it's going to open up a file directory screen, and then I know that I have them in my download file there, and I can just sort for a minute here because I have so many things. But there it is, week 2 JSON model. I click on that, and it just automatically uploaded it. Okay, I'm going to see at the bottom of my save states that it's there, and what I'm going to do, there it is, week 2 Cincy model, timestamped, like a minute later. I'm going to click on restore to restore that. So I just clicked on that, I've restored it, and then I'll find it in my active models right there. I click on edit or run the simulation, either way, and I'm off to the races. So that's how you download and share models. When we're working with geographically dispersed teams, which is exactly the case with you guys, I would assume, what people do is they're working on it and they just share their models with people, and it's amazing how people start to add one good idea to another and fine-tune it and come up with solutions that no one person might have thought of all on their own. Other questions?
Yes, so the next one, Demetrius asks, how does the maximum storage capacity and on hand relate as it pertains to how it's making the system break? Is it affected by the deliveries, or is it a daily increase based upon the simulation? And what I guess you could explain, Michael, is just some background information about the simulation, that the real world has some uncertainty and there's variation in demand and supply, and as well as chance increases or decreases. Perhaps you could comment upon that, but basically, when you sell out all your product and you don't have any on hand, that will cause the system to stop.
Right.
Also, too, the other way to consider it is not just the capacity at the facilities, but if you've got a route, you add product inventory that's in transit by increasing the number of vehicles or changing the vehicle size. So perhaps you could comment on that a little bit, Michael.
Right. And I just ran this because you've all found that when you first start, oh, yeah, I had that new facility out there and I didn't put any inventory. Let me just generate a little bit of data so we can look at that, and just to keep that new facility from messing things up right away, I'm going to remove that facility. So to remove a facility, you highlight that facility, and we just added that new facility there in downtown Toledo, and I'm going to click remove. So I will lose that, and now I'm going to go back, and as we work with the model, we're always flipping back and forth between the browser tab with the edit screen and the browser tab with the sim screen. If I keep clicking on simulation, we can do that, it'll work, but after a while you'll get about 50 of these little sim screens open, and then you'll start to go, why is this running so slow? This is driving me nuts. That's one of the frequently asked questions, is don't let a whole bunch of browser tabs get inadvertently opened up. So we'll do that, and I'm going to run that, and we'll generate a little data. And what you'll find, you've already discovered, is that the very first problem you have is that you run out of space in Fort Wayne, and the on-hand amount is calculated by your daily use plus whatever is being delivered. So when we take a look at this, if I go down here to the Fort Wayne store, what I can see is day zero, and there are what are known as day zero calculations, and that's in the FAQs. So if you want to know about the day zeros, I wouldn't worry about them, but sometimes when you're fine-tuning, you're working on something that is really precise, yeah, you do want to know about it, but for now, don't worry, but it's there. So you start out there at day zero, and then what we can see was when I look at what's going on in Fort Wayne, because when that problem occurred, I get a little box that opens up, shows me a snapshot. So my daily demand was 20, and then what I was doing, if I go over to my edit screen, I can see what I was delivering, and I know my delivery truck was there at the DC. We're using what is known as a hub and spoke delivery model, and you can see whenever I click on a facility where there are trucks and routes that originate at that facility, I see it immediately there on the map. And when I go to click on vehicles, because these are the vehicles now that are assigned to the facilities, and if I click on an individual vehicle, I can see where it's going. And so let's find that one that goes to Fort Wayne. It's that one. It's part of a multi-stop. It goes to Indy, up to Fort Wayne, and then back. Now I click on the route for that one, and I get again. So we're all just, it's always the same when we're handling the four entities. I look in this dialog box, I see something about the distance and the time it takes me to run that route. I see this truck is, here's the truck that's doing that work. I can see it's a medium-sized truck, etc. So at the speed that we've assigned to that truck, and given the distance, here's how long it takes to run that route. I can see when I get to Fort Wayne, I am dropping off 30. I could change that. I could type that over and say, hey, drop off 32 instead. Okay, 32 it is. If I try to overload the truck, if I try to drop off more than what the truck can carry, it will tell me, because I can see what the truck, the volume and the weight. So my daily on hand is calculated by, first we subtract what is the daily usage, and I know that daily usage is 20, and then I add whatever is delivered that day. Now, in this case, I'm delivering every day. In some cases, the truck may only run every other day. It's that type of thing is set right here, the delay between departures. What that means is the truck runs on its route, comes back to its origin facility, waits for, in this case, 10 hours. So it looks to me like it'd probably run, twice a day, et cetera, et cetera. Does that answer that question? Do you have more to add, Frank?
Well, I think it gets close to it, and the only thing that I'd say, let's say that you want to run a second truck, then what you do is you adjust that time interval between running trucks, so that every time that you decrease the interval, it's going to cause an additional truck to start at that time of the same capacity and with the same pickups and drop-offs.
Like if I said let's run it I could run the truck more frequently. You know, when you for instance when you need to deliver more product to a facility because it's running out, you can assign a bigger truck, B, have a smaller truck run more frequently, C, some combination of either of those, D, there are other ways to do it as well. Just like what you're thinking about is how would I do it in the real world. So what Frank just said was, here now I'm going to say this truck will run 4 hours. It'll run its route. It'll come back to the DC, wait for 4 hours instead of 10 hours, and then run again. Okay.
Okay.
More questions.
I'm checking. I'm going back up the list,
Yep.
and I'm still looking. So I'm sorry, Amanu is asked, if the store capacity is filled up to 100% capacity and you have a need to have storage, is it okay to switch to a warehouse in the same location in order to have enough storage? And I guess the approach is, if you need storage at a retail facility, there's nothing to limit, there's nothing to prohibit you from increasing the storage capacity at that retail location.
Right.
As opposed to establishing a warehouse adjacent to it.
Right. In effect, what we're modeling is perhaps doing just that, because if I have a store there in Fort Wayne and I need more space because I'm got so much product on hand there, I could suddenly make my storage capacity be 1,600, and you could think of that as if I was a store manager there in Fort Wayne. I call up the local public warehouse and I say, hey, I have an overstock situation. I need more storage. And absolutely, they'll be there, you know, within the hour. They'll coordinate with their trucks and mine and everything else, and it'll be as if I'd actually just added an addition onto my store. Of course, I'm going to pay for it. You know, my rent cost is going to go up, so I don't just do that willy-nilly. But in the spirit of first get your supply chain to run for 30 days, and that is do whatever you need to do, because you're going to learn a lot about the software. You're going to learn a lot about the supply chain itself, and then after you get it to run for 30 days, you'll add some more stores. You'll start thinking about how to make this whole thing run more efficiently. But don't stress yourself first by thinking of efficiency and 30 days. Just focus on 30 days. So,
right.
Yeah.
There's a balancing act between inventory that's at a stationary location versus in-transit inventory. And really, the general philosophy within supply chains is to have a small amount that covers the reorder quantity that you'll use up, plus a cushion for uncertainty, and then try to keep the product moving within transit. So the general preference is, instead of increasing store capacity or warehouse capacity, you probably could look at increasing the number of trucks, frequency, or the capacity on each truck as a means to try to be just-in-time inventory at the locations and matching that to what the sales rate is at a location.
Yes, and there's some useful stuff. Well, we'll let that run for a couple of days and look at the data that it generates. And again, useful stuff. There is, and we have it referenced in many places, but I'll just go here. And cutting inventory and operating expenses, to Frank's point. You can apply the tried and true economic order quantity equation, one of the central and classic equations of supply chain management, and you can apply it to the simulation data, and by gosh, it is the formula will not give you, quote, the answer, end of story, but it will point you in the right direction. And so we have an example of that laid out right here. And the thing about the EOQ is it gives you it's not necessary to calculate out to 4 decimal places. Supply chains are in the end, beset by problems that we can neither forecast nor control. So the notion of perfect optimization in the supply chain is only a notion. All you can do is continuously move toward it, but you will never get there. So don't agonize over the last decimal point. Yeah, Frank.
Well, and to that point, earlier you had shown some charts that show what the daily inventory level is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's increasing, sometimes it's decreasing. The ideal situation, just as a tip for people to think about for the future, is the more that you can get that chart to look like it's level, going east to west instead of from southeast to northwest or vice versa.
Right.
The better off you'll be. That's getting closer towards an optimal solution towards a facility.
Because flat means you're balancing your supply with your demand. So your on hand
Yes.
actually doesn't go up because you're delivering 100 every day and it's using 100 every day. And then what you try to do is get that level as low as possible. But remembering sometimes when you least expect it, a truck will miss a delivery and you go, I found a bug in the software. A truck was supposed to show up and it didn't. And all I will say is please read question number 2 in the FAQs. And welcome to the world. It can be frustrating. So
right, yes, that's a reality. That's exactly why you have a safety stock at a facility
right.
to take care of some of that uncertainty within a supply chain. That's definitely a reality. So the next question is, are we able to cross-level inventory between stores in lieu of sending another distribution center truck of resupply if demand is leveled at one store where the other has insufficient on-hand inventory?
Yes, you can do that. And let me show you how you might do that. Whenever you're working on your model and you want to just redraw it, click the browser refresh, and you can redraw your supply chain. And we know that there is a boatload of inventory in Fort Wayne, and the demand is relatively low there in Fort Wayne. We got 800 on hand. So maybe I want to move some of that Fort Wayne inventory back to the DC or to some other store that might need it. Several ways you can do it, just like there are several ways you can do it in the real world. At Fort Wayne, I could hire a truck, call up U-Haul or the local truck leasing company and have a Fort Wayne-based truck that begins moving product to maybe a new store in Columbus. Or let's take a look here on the, whoops, we will first click the DC because that's where the delivery truck originates that handles Fort Wayne, and then we will, and I know it was that one right there because I can see that's the one, and then I'm going to click on the route that truck runs, and you'll notice now that there is both a drop quantity and a pickup quantity. So, for instance, this truck, instead of dropping any more product at Fort Wayne, which really doesn't need it, I could just say 0, and instead maybe pick up. Now, how much can the truck handle? What is the size of that truck? That is a medium-sized truck. Now I could make it a large truck. I could do anything, but assuming I'll just leave it there as a small one, I'm going to say, okay, it could handle 60. So let's pick up 60. Maybe I can handle that prop. Not 600, but 60. Looks good. So I'm going to say update. So you see what I'm doing now is I'm dropping product at Indy, and then I'm running up to Fort Wayne, and I'm filling my truck. When I click on that vehicle there, that truck number 4, and here's the route. So I'm picking up 60 and then bringing it back to the DC. So let's just see what happens with that. So I'm going to go back to my sim screen, and I'm going to click on reload supply chain. It'll incorporate that change that I just made. Now I still might run into trouble there because I didn't solve the problem in Louisville, but let's just run it again. So it's going to give me a different result because I've changed the model. I'm going to click on play. And while it's running, think about the mental model. It will feel like a headache at first, like learning the steps to a new dance, until you internalize it. You get an intuition. You can start to hear the music and move in time and add a little of your own style along the way. And when you get that mental model, it'll be because you start to understand how product is flowing through the way you've designed your supply chain. Let's see what is going on in Fort Wayne now. Look, we're going down in Fort Wayne, which is much better. We got a ways to go, So got 250 on hand there. But see now, instead of it going inexorably up, we're pulling product out of there. And so we've run out. Yeah, we still had that problem down there in Louisville, but let's also see what is happening at the DC. We're starting to go up at the DC. Prior to this, we were going down at the DC. So you see the many, almost infinite number of possible combinations and ways that you can solve these different problems.
The next question is, can we change the truck directions like truck 1 going to the DC?
Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. I'm going to go back again. So all changes are made in your edit screen, and we'll just refresh. Well, I think I can just close out those boxes. And so if we take a look there at the DC, and then we take a look here at the trucks, like here's truck 1. Now, I can see what truck 1 is doing. It's running down there to Louisville. And here's a little bit about that truck. It's a small truck, etc. I can change its speed, for instance. This is 55 miles an hour, but actually, and that might be a little high, because it should be the average speed over the distance that you're traveling, which would include stop time at your delivery points where you're going to pick up or drop off stuff. And maybe this, what's the traffic there? If it's heavy traffic, then it wouldn't be running at 55 miles an hour. So if I change the speed in the truck, that will obviously, like if I go, let's say that the speed is maybe more like 65 kilometers an hour. Instead, click update, and if we take a look at that truck again, that was truck number 1. Now we take a look at its route. So its route has gotten longer because we did that. If I wanted this truck to instead start down there in Louisville and run up to Cincinnati and pick up product and come back to Louisville, I would basically delete this truck, because this truck has been assigned to a facility. Every vehicle, the way it works is products can be assigned to any facility and any route, and you start your supply chain model by defining your products. But then after that, you're always working in a strict sequence of facilities first, then any vehicles that may be assigned to that facility, and finally any routes that may be assigned to any of those vehicles. And a vehicle can have one to many routes. So if I wanted this truck 1 to, instead of running from Cincy down to Louisville, instead run from Louisville up to Cincinnati, what I would do is I would just delete it there. I'd click on where it is. It's truck number 1. I would say remove. I would remove it. And then what I would do is I would go to the Louisville store, and I could say, all right, now there are no vehicles currently in Louisville, but hey, Louisville is a pretty big store. For whatever reason, they decide they're going to lease their own trucks. So to create a new vehicle, just like to create a new facility, I open up the vehicles menu. I click on new, and we'll call this the Louisville truck. And maybe I want it to be a large truck, like that. Make it a large truck, so I can see new defaults, which operating cost goes up. Don't worry about carbon. We're not worrying so much in this case study about carbon. Some of the other case studies we get into tracking that. So sometimes you'll see some of the vehicles have carbon or not. You don't need to really worry about it. You can leave it as is, or you can type in 0. Just don't leave that field blank. Delay between departure. And if you leave delay between departure as 0, you have created a perpetual motion machine that will be forever buzzing back and forth between where it's come from and where it's going, waiting 0 amounts of time and running back again, which is kind of crazy. So there are reasons why you would do that in more advanced modeling techniques. But in Cincinnati, you don't need to do that. So let's say it runs down there every 12 hours, or let's say it runs every 24 hours. Whatever you'll start to experiment, or you can make it every 42 hours. You can make it what you want it to be, and you'll learn by experimenting. The answer is always try it and see what happens. So I'm going to update that. Now I've got a truck down there, big red truck down there in Louisville. There's no point in having a truck unless you assign it a route. So we select that truck, and then there are no routes. So what do I do? What do I do to create a new route? Does anyone have any thoughts? What would I do to create a new route? Type something into the chat box.
Let me watch for, there's one more question. Nobody's typed anything yet as far as how to add a route for
I'll bet, okay, well, let's see. I'll bet you all know, you're all rolling your eyeballs going, oh man, what a goofy question.
It says you have to pick a vehicle and
Yes.
then select the new button.
Yeah. I mean, we've picked the vehicle. Here's the truck we want. It's that Louisville truck we just created. Now, if I try to run the simulation where I do not have a route attached to any of the vehicles, and this is also in the FAQs, it will just, the sim screen will remain grayed out. You get a little message that says, hey, you have a vehicle without a route, because there's no point in having a vehicle without a route. So you either delete the vehicle or you assign the route. So now in that case, it's that Louisville truck. I click on routes, I click on new. I will call this the Louisville to Cincinnati. And then, see, I can send this truck anywhere I want. Any of the facilities that I've defined now, I can send it anywhere. In this case, I want it to go up to the DC and pick up product there. Maybe it could go right to the factory and pick up product at the factory. Yeah, what the heck, I'll do that. So I'm going to click Add Route to Stop. Now, we're leveraging the power of Google Maps, and in the scheme of things, we figure this is the best place, the best route for you to run. But if you know something that we don't, which is often true, you can see it's running right there, going over that bridge and going right there to the factory. And when I zoom in on that factory, again, you're going to see that factory is in a place where you would expect to find a factory. It's in an industrial park in downtown Cincinnati, down by the river there. So I didn't just plop it in the middle of a golf course. And I could say, no, I want to, you see that drag and drop, you see that little arrow there? So, and you've probably already used this in Google or something like that. But see, I can make it drag and drop. I can pop it around to different places if I wanted to go on other routes. So we'll just leave that as that is. And now I will assign a product to that. Now what I want is, because we saw earlier, we ran out of product down there in Louisville, so I'm going to say, let's pick up. We're not going to deliver anything, but we'll pick up something at the factory. We'll pick up like what? We know that the truck can carry 110. Let's say we pick up 100. Why not? So add that. So there we are. We've got a new route. I'm going to click Update. And then I am going to go back to my sim screen, and I'm going to reload that whole supply chain. So we've created a new solution to one of many possible solutions to the Louisville problem. And now we'll see how it works. The idea is first get to run for 30 days, and then later on you'll start to come to grips with many answers may work, but the best answer is always the answer that keeps your supply chain running for 30 days at lowest operating cost, lowest rent and transport cost, plus lowest amount of on-hand inventory across the supply chain. And that's, a pretty straightforward and objective answer to what's the best solution. You'll all come up with slightly different solutions, but what it turns out is that in any given situation, if you're always modifying and improving your model based on the sim results, you'll all start to converge on one or two similar solutions. These simulations will start to say, it'll show you what is better in any given situation, whether truck or rail or anything of the sort. So in this case, we ran for 8 days there, and then it says we have now that vehicle, and if I just click OK, it'll also put right here, Cincy Indy has picked up more products. Oh, we've drained Fort Wayne. Wow, and we went from overstock to, look, we've drained Fort Wayne. Okay. So you see what's happening there. There's a lot of ways we can handle this.
Okay, to that point, we're down now to the 1 minute warning without any timeouts. And I want to thank some of the students who were suggesting the additional steps that you follow to add that route. I just want to mention that it's probably a good strategy for anybody to go ahead, even within the course of a week, and make save states periodically, so that if you do make a significant change and it isn't working out,
Right.
you can go back to the previous save state that you had, and restart again from that point without having to redo a lot of work.
Right.
Michael, there was one other question, and maybe this is the closing question. Given an unstable demand frequency, which may be based on seasonality or initial overstock, does the simulation have an inventory smoothing calculation available to aid in calculating more accurate on-hand inventory levels?
No, I would use the EOQ, and again right here, because you can assume that that would be the order that the EOQ equation. If you plug in data from the simulation into the EOQ equation, we kind of walk you through it right there. You'll get the best ordering, the best delivery amount and delivery frequency. Otherwise, though, the data when we talk about demand, the demand stays the same. We don't have variable demand. It's on the to-do list, but right now you could assume that the demand there is your mean projected, your mean forecasted amount over the coming 30 days. We're focused on 30-day periods. So we're not trying to run these simulations for 3 months or 6 months. It's really focused on a rolling 30-day approach, which is what all the supply chain professional associations, now the APICs and the CSCMPs, are all focused on what is called S&OP, Sales and Operations Planning, rolling 30-day forecasts. So demand, you'll notice, is stable over those 30 days. Production is also stable. But what does sometimes happen is deliveries don't get made on time, and there's a whole explanation about that, question number 2 in the FAQs. And then also sometimes you'll get 2 deliveries in the same day or the same week. So you can't run everything absolutely tight. You have to have a little bit of safety stock, both in capacity and on-hand inventory.
So with that, you've run out of time. I thought this was a very good session. I don't know if Jim and Mariah have closing comments, or if there's anything that you want to say to sum it up, Michael, but I want to thank you, and I also want to thank all the participants. So I'll let other people speak now.
Yeah, Jim or Mariah, any points that you guys would like to make? And let me make sure that I can. I think your microphones are on, but let me just make sure. Jim, your microphone is on, and Mariah, yes. Why don't any closing remarks, you guys?
I just want to reiterate, I said this in announcements, but I encourage you all to start taking screenshots now, thinking about that final report, and really documenting everything you do now, because that's going to save you a lot of time at the end of the term.
And Jim? All right. Maybe Jim's got some, not quick. Oh, well.
Well, I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
All right. Well, I think this is, you guys are all off to a really good start, and everything is online. You can also, if you run into a puzzling problem of a technical nature, there is on the edit screen, there's that support ticket. You can click on the support ticket and send us a question. If you're saying we found a bug in the software, please do attach your JSON file of the model where you found that bug. Please do check out the FAQs first before you do that. And otherwise, we want you to really have a good time. I hope you love working with it, seriously. So any feedback that you have would be much appreciated. Yeah.
Just one other side note. If you've attended tonight's session, there's another session scheduled for Thursday that's much later. You're welcome to attend, but that's not required. You only need to attend one session, but if you get into some of the assignment this week and you've got other questions, if you want to tune in on Thursday night, you're welcome to.
Yes. All right. Well then.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Good night, all.
Night.